He's the 2012 recipient of the San Diego Critics Circle Craig Noel Award for Outstanding Actor of the Year. He's an international headliner that has worked with the likes of Sinbad, Jerry Seinfeld, Rodney Dangerfield, and Jeff Foxworthy, as well as having headlined clubs and colleges all over the United States and Canada. He's also a featured regular as Big Mike on the NBC TV series Chuck. He can be seen on the Disney Channel's original TV and movies for over the past 30 years. Check out his IMDb credits. He is in production on several projects as a writer and or producer, including a talk show that he hosts for pureflix.com called Pure Comedy. And he's here live with us online. Let's talk to the hilarious and well-loved Mark Christopher Lawerence today on Live with Tricia.
Welcome to Season 2, Laugh Your Past Off. Live with Tricia is an innovative platform that's been recorded before a live online studio audience. As a faith-based award-winning actor, director, author, and entrepreneur, Tricia Harmon inspires, listens, and joins the larger discussion. Get ready to engage for the next 30-ish minutes in innovative and authentic conversation with award-winning and renowned comedians from around the country, offering inspirational perspective and purpose as together we learn how to laugh our past off.
Thank you so much. I am Mark Christopher Lawerence. It's my birth-given name. It's not a made-up Hollywood name. You know, there's a lot of Hollywood made-up names out there. Ving Rhames, for example. I've been black 55 years, and not once have I met a brother named Ving. We like, as a people, we like to throw the Q around. You know, Shaquille, Shaniqua, Aquanetta. I met a little boy the other day, Tyrone, with a Q. He said, my mama said the Q is silent. I said, tell your mama the Q is stupid. I was lucky. My brother named his kids after things he likes. Cars he can't even afford. Porsche and Bentley. I got a little fat nephew, Hummer. My mother took my name right out of the Bible. You know, nice, strong biblical name, Mark, New Testament, you know. Let me say this, if you use the Bible as a reference to name your child, you have a responsibility to read the chapter in which you found the name. So that people can know and your child can know what you are saying with it. You don't want to get that phone call at kindergarten going, come and get him! Beelzebub is the devil.
Mark, welcome. It is so good to have you here. Thank you for joining us here on Live with Tricia. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good.
Good. Now I'm calling you Mark, but you have many names. So what do you like being called by, or what are you used to being called?
Well, it doesn't matter to me. Is you know, when I was a kid, people called me Chris because my family called me Chris. And then when I got to college, people called me Mark Christopher. And then as a professional actor, people started calling me Mark Christopher Lawerence, or MCL. So,
MCL. Yeah, that's awesome. And the same thing. I've got Patricia, Pat, Patty, Trish, Tricia. So whatever they call me, I'm answering. But it's wonderful. Yeah. You're on the West Coast. You're in San Diego. How's it out there?
Oh, it's nice and warm. It's a warm winter.
Good. Glad to hear that.
We get cold at night, though, but not as cold as you.
Yeah, your temperatures vary from sunset to, you know, once the sun comes up, where ours kind of fluctuate maybe 5 degrees tops, and that's Michigan for you. So I'm right about here, and you're 3 time zones away, and so hopefully you're faring well, avoiding all the fires. Our prayers are with all those who have just been in incredible disaster zones and acts of nature. It's been horrific, and I know you've kind of been part of that because of the routes that you've had to take to
right.
Work.
Yeah. A few weeks ago, I think you and I were talking as I drove 8.5 hours to get home from Bakersfield, which is probably a 3-hour drive, if that.
Yeah. So, wow. Well, we're going to talk today about what life was like before you became a comedian and got into all of the work that you're doing. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the process of what that looked like, how those doors opened up, who helped you along the way, and then talk about what you're doing now and what we can look at in 2020. So I hope everybody buckles up and gets ready for a wonderful conversation. Because Mark, you are a man that has superseded probably your own expectations for sure, as far as how well grounded you are and the longevity. You know, none of us have arrived, and we, can all agree on that. But you are a man who I just so respect and look to as one of those role models in this industry. So share with the viewers and listeners how you got started. What was life like as a little boy growing up where you grew up? Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Well, I grew up in Compton. 1969, my mother bought a house in Compton, and we were the second black family on our street. And by 1974, all the white families had moved out, and the Robinsons moved in, which was my first inkling of what gang members were, because the Robinsons had 7 sons.
Yeah, we're not talking about Swiss Family Robinson, right?
Right.
Swiss knives.
Right. And they had 7 sons, and most were gangbangers. And, I think for me, it was more of an experience of like if you put a frog in a pot of water and turn the fire on slowly, that frog doesn't jump out. He adapts to the environment. And I think that's what happened with me. It's like although my environment changed, it wasn't overnight, so it didn't feel like a drastic change until I got out once I went to college, and looked back and went, wow, I'm lucky to be alive.
Yeah, because it was just a progressively new normal for you as you evolved into an adult. And so how did that affect your family? Your mom raised you as a single parent. You have siblings.
An older brother and sister. My brother's passed, but my sister and I, fought as kids do, and she's today is my rock. But we, my mother worked every day really hard. She worked at McDonnell Douglas, and so we sort of policed each other, my brother and my sister and I, and. My mother did what she had to do to keep us a roof over our head.
So what was that like growing up in a single family as far as your faith, and what did that look like?
We were going to church no matter what. It's like, I actually had a conversation with a friend earlier that no matter what you did on Saturday night, if you went out and hung out with your friends and were out late, you were getting up Sunday morning, going to church. So it was first and foremost in our lives growing up.
Yeah, I can only imagine, and keeping each other in check or covering for each other as needed.
Right.
But
right.
It played a pretty significant role in your upbringing as far as you coming to a personal relationship with Christ. And so how did that all happen, and at what age?
Well, I think at an early age, I don't know exactly when, I accepted Christ. And then I think because I was forced to go to church no matter what, by the time I got to college, I sort of, like a lot of kids, just decided, I'm grown. I don't have to go if I don't want to go. And I didn't go. And then for years, I didn't go. And then in my 20s or 30s, I felt like something was missing in my life. Mm-hmm. And I went back and rededicated and, sort of put that faith, or put my journey into the faith. Because I think sometimes we try to put the faith into the journey, but it's not that. It's like you gotta accept the faith and then let that sort of lead you on the journey. Oh,
that's good. That's good. And I can resonate with that, because I kind of had a religion but didn't have a relationship. And so we can, talk the talk, but there's one thing to walk the walk and then all of a sudden be walking with my Lord and Savior, rather than just talk or think I understand and have this intellectual knowledge. It becomes
Right.
personal and practical. That's good.
Well,
I like how you distinguish that.
Yeah, and I think you know, I don't want people to think that I'm a just perfect Christian, because I'm not. It's like
You're not?
no.
I am.
I mean,
Well,
I know what I struggle with on a daily basis. You know what I mean? So I think because of God's grace and mercy that you know, we're able to go back and say, Lord, forgive me, and move on, and in the process, you know, because Christianity is a process. You know, not everybody wakes up one day and you accept God and then boom, you're miraculously changed overnight. Because clearly that hasn't happened with me.
you know,
But
and
some people do. Some people,
yeah,
it does that for them. But you
and
know,
I'm
for me,
so
it's like
thankful, because if it was as good as it's gonna get, take me home. You know,
Right.
why continue? So thank God that we are in process, but thank God that He says He's begun a good work in us, and He is faithful to complete it to the day of the Lord Jesus Christ. So we
Amen.
are all in process, and He's not about perfection, because we have the perfect one that's already gone before us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So identifying with Him is huge. So as we kind of lead into a little bit about, you know, from your past, and then segue, I'm assuming baby of the family, funny guy. Were you always cracking jokes and had this streak of humor?
Yeah, I think it was sort of a coping mechanism. You know, like you know, growing up in my neighborhood, you know, we talked about each other a lot. You know, playing the dozens is what we called it, and I think you know, sometimes being funny got me out of trouble. You know, like out on the streets, it's like you playing football, and all of a sudden there's a thing, and then if I'm funny, maybe I won't get punched in the face.
Yeah.
and I think that has sort of been with me all my life. Although I'm pretty shy until I get to know you a little bit before I loosen up. Like even now, it's like I'm quiet until I figure out who everybody is in the room, and then
Yeah, can crack it up.
yeah.
So when you were growing up in high school, it sounds like you were probably a little like me. I was 2-season athlete. I played basketball and softball, but I was also this music, fine arts, and theater and musicals, and
Mm-hmm.
loved English, loved speech, and all of that. So what were you? Did you play sports, and did you get into were you the high school musical kind of persona?
Well, we didn't do musicals at my high school. My high school didn't have a stage, so we had a double room that was the theater, quote unquote. I played football, and I wrestled, and I was on the speech team, and my English teacher, Mrs. Schilling, was also the drama teacher, and so she introduced me to theater. I did one play in high school and won the literary Olympiad for the Concord Unified School District as best actor. And then, you know, because of her, you know, I think that's a direct link to comedy, because she introduced me to a man, Perry Brents, who sort of mentored me a little bit.
Mm.
He was at USC doing these shows called Evening of Soul, and I ended up doing some of those shows with him, you know, in the 11th grade, which is right around the time my friend Lennon dared me to go on stage at the Comedy Store and do 3 minutes. And I was funny, and I had no act. And Louis Anderson says, "Hey, keep writing. You got something, kid." And that was the beginning of me being a comic.
So after high school, then where did you go to school?
I went to San Diego State University for 1 semester and was completely fish out of water at San Diego State. I went from student body president, captain of the football team, captain of the wrestling team, president of the speech team, to the only black guy in all my classes. And just felt lost and intimidated, and told my mom I need to come home. And I went home, went to Cerritos College, and got on the speech team and football team there, and ended up getting a scholarship to USC for
So let
speech.
me ask you, I can only imagine, because I too, you know, at a point in my life, it was after I married my second husband, we were led by meeting a pastor on a plane. He invited us to his church, and it was an all-black full gospel church in Indianapolis. And we had 3 kiddos at home still, and we were the only white family. So do you regret that you left? Do you feel like, if you, in hindsight, what would you say to somebody who's kind of struggling, feeling overwhelmed and maybe alone, isolated, and like you said, a fish out of water? What would you say to that young Mark Christopher Lawerence now?
I would say do what's best for you. And I think what was best for me at the time was to go home and regroup. And, it worked out, but I think had I stayed in that environment where I was, I don't think I would have blossomed into the person that I am today, because I literally every day went back to my apartment and just, folded.
Mm.
I do my homework and go to bed, and that's that.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good experience, so I had to regroup.
Yeah, and thank God your mama gave you the disciplines and that kind of character building at a young age, because you don't unlearn how to be a leader and how to be successful. You follow those principles, and no matter where you're at, you take that with you. And so it sounds like you continually just readjusted and continued to, I always talk about plan, do, check, adjust. And if it's not where you belong and you're feeling that need to pivot, and it's confirmed and you have the peace, that passes all understanding, then don't throw off the past. Laugh your past off, like this whole, season is all about. Learn from it and take the values and the principles and the disciplines with you. So what happened next at the
well, I think for me it was more of, see, my plan is not necessarily God's plan, right? It's like God says, I'm going to take you from A to Z. And then because we have free will, we decide that we're going to go to B and then C and then D, and we bounce it back and forth. And God didn't say, I'm going to take you to all these other places. I'm going to take you from A to Z. And, for him, it's a straight line. Our free will sends us to B and C and D. And sometimes that gets in our way. These are the self-inflicted wounds that happen because I have free will. If you tell me what to do, then, okay, I'll do that. But if you just say, hey, Mark, I need this to happen, I don't quite know how to do it, but this is where you need to get. And so I'm going to find my way to do it. And usually my way is not the best way.
Yeah. I love that scripture. It says, man devises his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps. And
yes.
So sometimes, I think you're right. I think sometimes God doesn't choose to send us right to Z. Sometimes he takes us out in the wilderness to teach us a few things, get us alone and isolated so that we can look to him and him only. And I've had those seasons in my life, but also I've had those seasons where I didn't know what to expect. And I thought he was going to do A, B, and C. And then, all of a sudden it was like, no, here it is. So I think the lesson there is just not just get ready, but stay ready, stay relevant, stay honed, keep working your craft and relying on the Lord to direct you, because he really does. There's another verse, and not to throw out a bunch of scripture here, but this is one of my favorite verses that I use in my life, is that eye has not seen, ear has not heard, it hasn't even entered into the heart of man, the things that God has prepared for them who love him. And so, sometimes sometimes we're just not praying big enough. We're just praying for the next step. And God's saying, I'll give you the whole vision if you want to ask me, but we're taking baby steps, which give them a lot to work with. But sometimes,
well, it's because I think we sometimes forget how big our God is.
Yeah.
And once we lose track of that, and we get sort of steeped in our own quagmire of challenges, we can't see past that, and we go, man, I need this, and this will help me. But God says, look, I'm bigger than that.
Yep.
You know, that's not necessarily going to help you. It's going to help you right now, but how about you ask for this?
Yeah.
This bigger
Yeah.
thing that takes care of that and everything else in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm learning now, you know, in life is that to trust and to pray bigger.
Yeah. You know what I call it? I call it sand. And this is a perfect segue because I love listening to what led you up, and I'd love to be able to delve into the huge doors that God has opened for you, because it does seem like, you know, you're not an overnight sensation, but you definitely had the doors opened big and fast, and you went from A to Z relatively quickly. And so as you think about how to help us see all of that in your life, I just love that we think as a man thinks, so is he. And when I talk about sand, I'm talking about a book that I wrote that helped me. You know, comedy can be therapeutic, and our career choices, especially in the entertainment industry, and can be our go-to for therapy. For me, it was actually writing, and I wrote a book called Sand to Pearls, and it's the acrostic for transforming the sabotaging and negative dialogue stuck between your ears. It's available now on Amazon. It's the first of a 3-part personal development study guide. This book will inspire you with biblical principles, plus equip you to take every thought captive in under a minute. The innovative method will help you never forget how to navigate and transform every thought, but you will also be able to apply every step immediately. You'll experience freedom, you'll experience clarity and a renewed mindset, offering you the truth and a new level of sustained love, joy, peace, and success in your walk with the Lord. So thanks for sharing that, Mark. I think what we think about and how we view God really is the key indicator as to how far we go, how fast we go, and how long we get to enjoy the fruit of that journey. So
Right.
where did the Lord lead you once you went to college and you had some people that were starting to introduce you and open doors for you?
Well, I think there was a snowball effect. You know, once I got to college, one of my debate coaches invited an agent to see me in a play. And she invited me to her office for a meeting a couple of days later and said, you know, I want to represent you. And I didn't have pictures. I didn't have money. I didn't have anything. I was like, you know, I was at USC, you know, probably the brokest guy on campus. And so she actually paid to have my pictures taken and sent me out on my first audition, which was for Hill Street Blues, which changed the way we watch TV. All the cop shows today are sort of patterned after Hill Street Blues.
Yeah.
And that the first audition was my first job. And which was the best thing that could have happened to me because it was on the machine before I got home, and I rushed home after every audition and checked the machine for a year before I got another job. Then I went, oh, I'm not going to get them all. And now I can go in, do my audition, and leave it there.
Wow.
You know, I don't freak out about it. I'm going to get a job or I'm not.
That's good.
Yeah.
So after Hill Street Blues and then you were starting, were you doing comedy in the clubs, colleges and clubs as along?
When I was in college, I would do an occasional open mic, you know, just because I knew I wanted to do it. But I was so busy with speech and debate and theater that I didn't do it as much. But then when I graduated college, I went to San Francisco and did a show with the San Francisco Mime Troupe. And they do Commedia dell'arte. It was very sort of large acting. And when it was over, the San Francisco Comedy Festival started. And I entered the competition and made it to semifinals with really no act. And I went home and said, you know what, I can do this for a living. And I did these 5-minute segments on a cable access show called Dare You to Laugh. And that lady paid me for my first show. She took me to Seattle, Tacoma, Washington to do a show. And she says, oh, by the way, Speedy can't make it, so I'm going to need you to do 30 minutes. And so I didn't even know I had 30 minutes. So I took out a business card and wrote all my little 5-minute sets on the back of a business card.
Wow.
And ended up doing 37 minutes. And I was like, oh, I got napped.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you started working with some of these huge names, Seinfeld, Sinbad, Dangerfield, Foxworthy. How did that all come about?
Well, there was a club in Newport Beach, California, is where I first opened for Jerry. I think I opened for him there, and then I opened for him once at the Improv in LA. And it was about being a working a comedian trying to get out there. And I was opening for a guy in Vegas, and at Rodney Dangerfield's club. He had a place called Rodney's Place in the old El Rancho Hotel, and it was Jimmy McGee breakfast special, $1.99. Mark Christopher Lawerence. So my billing was under the breakfast special.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's prime time right there.
Right. So Rodney got into a thing with Caesar's Palace. They were suing him because he canceled a weekend of shows, and he countersued and won. So the showroom runner said to me, "Hey, we sent everybody home. Rodney's gonna headline tonight. So do 30 minutes and then introduce Rodney." I said, "Okay, what do you want me to say about him?" He says, "It's Rodney Dangerfield. Say his name." And then I ended up hanging out with Rodney until the sun came up.
Oh,
which was really cool.
Been an experience.
Yeah. Everywhere we went, people loved him so much. We didn't pay for anything. We ate all night. It was so full.
So who would you say is your biggest influencer and or mentor in the comedy side of your business?
Wow. I mean, there's a lot of folks that I sort of glean from, and although he's not popular today, the best advice I ever got was from Bill Cosby. I was working on Ghost Dad, and I was watching my first 7-minute tape in my trailer, and he and Sidney Poitier were walking by, and he saw it, and he stopped and said, "How long is it?" I said, 7 minutes. And he poked his head, and he says, "Rewind it." So I rewound it, and he watched the whole 7 minutes. Wow. And he says, it's as if you're afraid of the silence. He says, if they're not chattering, they're listening. Right. He said, you're just firing jokes and not giving them a chance to laugh. He says, slow down. Don't move. Don't talk until the laughter subsides. And best advice I ever got, because now, right after that, immediately, all of a sudden I had 25 minutes of material because I was doing 25 minutes in 7 minutes. And then now it's second nature. Yeah. I always kind of wait and then into the next thing. Yeah, you can just feel it.
I think Jeff Foxworthy is one that says that a lot now too. On the last episode or season of Bring the Funny, I think I've heard him say that many times to most comedians. Yeah. Slow down and embrace the silence. Give them time to absorb it. So that's the comedy side of you, and you are a man of many talents. You also have like a 30-year career in the not just TV, film world as well. So how did this whole thing with the NBC series and Chuck and playing Big Mike and now some of the other things that you're working on, how did that all come into play?
Well, everything just snowballs. It's like the more you do, the more you do. It's like you do a job, and then these producers like you, so they bring you back for something else. And so in the late 80s, early 90s, I did a lot of sitcom work. The agents I had, once they saw me do stand-up, they actually stopped sending me out for dramas, which I don't understand, because I'm unlike a lot of comics. Like some comics, they're very funny and they can be funny, but they're not good actors. But I'm a classically trained actor, so I'm an excellent actor, and I do both, I think, equally well. But once that agency saw me do stand-up, they thought, well, wow, we got to put him out here doing these sitcoms. And as a result, I ended up working for a lot of people over and over and over again. And once you do one thing and they like you, then they'll bring you back for something else. And that's what happened. It's like my career just sort of snowballed along. But early in the career, like my first 5 years out of college, I was concerned because I was sitting around for a few months and I was like, man, all my friends that were on the debate team were clerking for judges and working at major law firms. And I was like, maybe I made a mistake. I should go and do something else. Maybe try to go back to law school. I'm looking in the paper one day and I see a thing, learn to deal cards. We have placement. You make a 7-figure income in Monaco. I was like, oh, hey, maybe that's for me. So I go down and audit the first class, and it's $499 if you decide to stay and do the next class. And before the first break, the suits come in and shut the class down. Apparently, they're laundering money through there. So here's one of those A to Z.
That's how they showed you how to make all that dough.
Right. It's one of those A to Z situations where I went off to B and C, and God said, "Nah, you ain't dealing no cards. I need you over here." And next thing I know, a week or so later, I was contacted by the wardrobe department of Terminator 2 that I had booked the job on Terminator 2, which I had auditioned for like 2 months earlier and thought I didn't get it. And God opened that door, and at that point, it was the most money I've ever made in a film.
Wow, that's awesome. So you've had over 100 appearances in TV and productions, and you actually just finished up a Christmas production. And is that on Oprah Winfrey's network?
Yeah, on Oprah Winfrey Network, there's One Fine Christmas, which is really a one fine film. It's really you get to see me dramatically, I think, in this film. That's
already
nice
premiered, right?
Yeah, it started running the 15th of November. Somebody texted me last night. They saw it last night. But also Second Chance for Christmas, which is on Amazon. You can see that there or buy the DVD at Walmart. Is another. It's a reimagining of A Christmas Carol, and it's funny and it hits all the beats. And by the end of it, I found myself tearing up.
Oh, we're gonna make sure we put that in the notes because those are good. Those are good watches. I'm gonna go take in. You also had a recent appearance on the Adult Swim TV show. Tell us about that.
Here's the funny thing. I think you and I had talked before about jobs that maybe I didn't take, and I said that there were 3 jobs that I hadn't taken, and 2 of them were because they had me selling cigarettes to kids, and so I passed. Yeah. And one of them was on that show, Black Jesus. It's like I read the script and I told my agents, I said, I don't want to go in because I'm not trying to take the fast track to hell because it was so irreverent. And then one of my best friends, who was my writing partner, he and I are pitching a show together right now, became a consultant on that show. And also after Charlie Murphy passed away, then they asked him to rewrite the season because now they had to figure out how to do the episodes without Charlie Murphy. So he calls me up and says, "Hey, I think I have a thing for you on this show." I said, "Well, I already passed on one of those." And he goes, "Yeah." He says, "I think this is not going to offend anybody." And so I go in and do this job on Black Jesus, and it's a pretty funny episode. I was going to say, I think Della Reese, summed it up for me after, when I worked with her on Touched by an Angel. She said, "Look, God opens doors for you, and sometimes it's not about you, so when he opens a door for you to go do a job, go do your job, and then be aware that you might be there because he needs to touch somebody else."
Wow, that's huge.
Which makes sense.
I identified with Della Reese mainly because I started graying really, really young, and I had this resistant gray streak, and it literally did look like Della Reese's when Della Reese had, the Touched by the Angel, and she had that, and it was my iconic look for a long time until I just kind of went, then I went from all white in front and black in the back. So when I'm on stage, I could turn around and, they're like, "Hey, where'd Tricia go?" But, bless her heart. Those are words of life that you just need, because sometimes you're the salt, you're the light in the dark place. And it may not, the project may not represent who your daddy is, but you can.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's
Exactly.
awesome.
I used to do this. I used to go to this home fellowship, and there was one particular guy there. No matter, I could go every week in a row for 10 weeks, and he would always come to me and talk to me about my career. And one night I told him, I said, "Hey man, I'm here trying to talk about my soul." And so he said to me one night, he said, "You should do more Christian movies and TV shows." And I said, "Well, I'm not in a position to say that's all I want to do." I said, I have to take what comes, and unless I'm just offended by it or something, or that I don't think it's. I said, I'm not in a position to pick and choose at this point in my career, and because of it, I think it really helped me to understand what Della was talking about. Because, and like you said, you just go and be who you are, and then God touches people and you don't even know it.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but there's a scripture verse that talks about in the multitude of counselors, safety. And your agent actually suggested to you to turn down an offer on SNL.
Yeah. Yeah. And for them, it was because it was a 6-year contract that was only $5,000 an episode, and with 5% bumps each year, you can't renegotiate. For them, it was about the money. They didn't see the bigger picture that it could have blown me up, and the money would have followed.
Yep.
But they were like, well, we can put you on 2 or 3 sitcoms and make what they're paying you in a year.
Yeah.
And so, in retrospect, I think I should have just followed my first mind and went. But, I think my path has been my path.
Yep. And time will tell. And why don't doubt in the darkness what God's revealed in the light. I mean, to live without regret and just say, you know what, if I missed it, God's going to bring it back around if he wants it, because my heart is yielded to where he's calling me. So I love that about you, Mark. You just are nailing it. And so I want to just take a second here because we're just about, I can't believe we're already done just about. We're going to wrap it up in just a few minutes. But I want to find out what's next. What are you working on, and what are you going to be doing in 2020 so people can follow you and take in all of your shows? But I also want to ask our viewers and our listeners a question. Is Live with Tricia worth keeping online? Are you enjoying this conversation with Mark Christopher Lawerence? I hope so. And if so, I need to know that and would love for you to support this. This is a listener, viewer supported online platform. And so if you would please go over and consider giving a support, become a partner, a cheerful giver at livewithtricia.com/partners. You can give at any level, receive the incentives that are according to that. We'd greatly appreciate it. Today's episode of Live with Tricia is underwritten by Noble Pearls Media, where inspirational creatives influence culture by representing leaders in the media, ministry, and marketplace. For your film, modeling, voiceover, keynote speaker, and career coaching needs, contact Tricia Harmon at noblepearlsmedia.com. So here we are. Your docket is full. You're in Canada. You're in the United States. You're veering up. You've worked with some of the best, like Will Smith in The Pursuit of Happiness and The Island, Garfield, Terminator 2, Fear of the Black Hat, Seinfeld, and Cooties, just to list a few of those. What are you gearing up for right now?
Well, right now we're pitching a show that we're trying to get on the air, and so my focus is kind of there. But I'm gearing up to go to Canada. I'm going to Canada next week to do comedy at a church for 5 shows. I think it's Northwest Community Church or something like that. There's a flyer on Instagram. And then I go to, that's in Vancouver. Then I go to Calgary and do the Comedy Cave. And then in February, I'm doing a tour, the date night tour in Canada. And then probably later in the year, we'll do some of it here in the United States.
That is awesome. I can't wait to see that. How creative is that?
You know, for me, it was really a good thing because it's forcing me to write. You know, when I was approached with the idea of doing the tour, because I guess they've been around for a while, they said, yeah, so we're going to need you to do, at least 20 minutes of date material. And I was like, oh, I don't really have any date material. So I had to start writing jokes, and, you know, which forced me to write. So, and I was in a little bit of a slump. So
Yeah,
it's helping.
I was going to say, it's very therapeutic.
It is. It's, you know, sometimes, you know, you're just, jokes are just flying out of your head, and then sometimes they're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get caught up in whatever your situation is, emotionally, physically, mentally, and it shuts you down sometimes. Yeah, I had a 2-year period where I didn't write a joke. And then one day went and did stand up, and while I was on stage, a piece of a little something came out that I had never said before, and that led me to another joke. And all of a sudden, these jokes started flying out. I go home and I'm writing till like 3 a.m.
Wow.
And it happens like that sometimes.
Yeah. To be in the wilderness, to be isolated and insulated for a season, and then to be willing to step out. And yeah, there is a beauty. I have learned that, you know, with a family of 7 kiddos, and we were in ministry, we were in the inner city, I was homeschooling, community leader. We were all on stage together as a family doing community art, and, you know, you name it, we were involved and I was active. And so when I started becoming more and more empty nester, and then I went through my never in a million years would I had ever thunk moments happened, that silence is deafening. And I had a really hard time embracing the solitude, the insulation, the isolation, and that silence. And that's why I started writing my book, because, you know, I knew what was already going on in my head. I had a conversation, I had this committee of critics and condemners and naysayers, and, you know, just messing with me. The narratives that were running in my head were crazy. So out of that, and in that silence, I started writing, and, you know, just doing it for my own sake, and listening to other people. Number one, the Word of God, God himself and his word, but then great men and women in ministry and inspirational speakers, and even in the marketplace, businessmen and women and people in the entertainment. And because I kept engaged, even though in the silence and in this, you know, solitude, that desert moment, I stayed engaged. God doesn't stay quiet. He really does speak to us in this whisper. You know, he even says, I'm in the small wind. And so that's huge for you to, I mean, probably that's one of the most important things that I hope people get out of this, is that you will go through times that you can't explain and you don't understand, and you're confused, or, you know, like, did I miss it, God? Those are the moments of testing. Those are the moments of refining. You don't realize it, but, you know, that's when you're being proven and staying authentic, right, to what he's called you to be. So
right. I think for me, like you, like the therapy is in the writing. It's like sometimes, you know, things bother me, and I end up writing a joke about it, but not necessarily putting it on stage yet, because it's still too close. It still opens a wound or something. And I often tell younger comics that, you know, it'll inform you when it's ready to go on stage, because it'll just come out.
Yeah. And it'll be freeing. You'll know it's the right time. Yeah,
because you won't break down and go back to your hotel room and cry. Just sit in the shower with the water. Oh, why did I tell that joke?
I can't believe I said that. Oh, Mark, you are a brother that I dearly love in the Lord. Thank you so much for giving us this time in your busy, busy schedule. Tell everybody where they can find you and follow you and subscribe and get notifications and all that.
Well, probably the easiest way is to Google me, Mark Christopher Lawerence, but my website, markchristopherlawerence.com, has links to all of my social media. I think everything is really Mark Christopher Lawerence, except for Twitter, which is Mark CHR Lawrence. Twitter wouldn't give me my whole name. But you can interact with me from my website too. You can shoot me an email, say what you want to say. Sometimes I may have something interesting to say back, sometimes not.
Love it. Well, this has been great. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. This is Mark Christopher Lawerence, and I'm Tricia Harmon, and this is Live with Tricia, a production of Noble Pearls Media. Thank you for listening and watching to Season 2 with Mark Christopher Lawerence. Catch him on all of his social platforms, follow him, and attend the events. Make sure you're getting notifications so that you don't miss our next episode, and I'm excited for you to take part in that. So make sure that you subscribe and follow me as well at Live with Tricia. So join us back here on Live with Tricia, where together we laugh our past off, because after all, laughter is the best medicine. Thanks, Mark. I can't wait till next time.
Thank you, Tricia.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Wasn't that a great episode of Live with Tricia? Be sure now to follow, share, and please leave a comment on our social media platforms using the handle Live with Tricia. You can make more seasons and episodes possible. Become a cheerful giver. Choose your level of giving and experience the joy at livewithtricia.com/partners. Let us know how this is encouraging, equipping, and strengthening you in your daily walk. Have a suggestion? Drop us a line. info@livewithtricia.com. Join us next week for another amazing episode of Live with Tricia. I'm Misty. Thank you for joining us.